Kia ora e te whānau, Pacific family. Wong Pacific greetings to everybody out there. This is another episode of In the Kitchen, where we look at Pacific relevant food matters and speak to experts in various fields. And this particular episode, it's really a deep dive into things that matter in food in everyday lives in the Pacific. Today, we are talking with two distinguished guests. First one is Mrs. Seema Shandil, who's the CEO of Consumer Council of Fiji. She's got a distinguished career of over 20 years and extensive knowledge in the field of research, economics, project management, and Mrs. Shandil is a consumer champion and will continue working towards improving the marketplace and best interests for consumers in Fiji. Welcome, Seema. Lovely to see you.
Hi, Robert.
Our second guest is no stranger to anybody who's ever had a television in the Pacific, ever, probably, and that is Chef Leo Vusilai from Vanuatu. And Leo is the season 1 winner of Pacific Island Food Revolution. I met Leo first on an airplane, and there's been a hell of a journey since then. He's someone who's understood his role within his culture and food. And he's really become, I think, in many ways, Vanuatu's celebrity chef slash food leader. And his particular focus and passion and work now is in uplifting the cuisine of Vanuatu for economies and for society, etc. Did I do okay, Leo? Does that grab your identity clearly enough? Lovely to see you, Leo. So our topic today is really looking at the true cost of food. Why should people change what and how they eat? Healthy diets can be affordable and should always be diverse. There is a major hidden cost, though, to unhealthy diets beyond what we pay for the food itself. Everyone knows someone in the Pacific who's got diabetes or heart disease and NCD, usually due to what you eat. So when you go to the shop and you buy something to eat, do you think about the true cost of your purchase in terms of your whole of life, in terms of your local economy, in terms of your health, and in terms of the environment? So I'll go to you first, Seema, with a general question around this. What do you believe is the true cost of food and the true cost of healthy eating?
Thank you, Robert. Working with the consumers for quite some time now, and through our service, what we have come to understand is, the decision that consumers make when they decide what to purchase is, solely dependent on the affordability. They really want to actually go, onto healthy diets, but what intrigues them to switch to processed food is the cost. If Fiji is a land where we are inundated with a lot of seasonal fruits, fresh vegetables, but the supply really does not cater for the people at all times, and also sometimes it becomes so difficult for them to afford the same and have the same in the basket that goes onto the table for the family. So the basic question I would like to pose here is why people eat what they eat. It is rather more complex, involving both the cultural and the psychological aspects, such as traditional foods or individual preferences caused by childhood experiences, as well as the problem of transportation. Sometimes we do have availability, but the same is not being accessible by a certain group of people. Availability of food, as I said, in particular area, the economic determinants, the social determinants, and the psychological determinants all play a very fundamental role in influencing the decision of the Fijian consumers. The best way to feed ourselves is to grow our own food, or at least buy it from the local producers who actually live close by. But then, as I said, the issue is the country able to supply enough to the people? Is the supply enough? And as I said, we are inundated with so many of tropical fruits, but being produced locally, it comes at a very expensive price.
Mm.
And that is why, our consumers switch to apples or pears or some imported food, which makes into the market because it is much cheaper to the locally grown food or fruits.
But Seema, don't you think that if there was because the market, the consumers really dictate what the producers create, correct? Everything's driven by the consumer, which is why your role at Consumer Fiji is so important. So don't you think if there was a general awareness that local food is healthy food, and
Mhm.
that local food is available locally, and if we all get it, the prices will come down. Do you think that's a reasonable market-based premise to progress?
Yes, I do think so. I mean, as rightfully you have said, consumers, have a big influence, and they can, through their demand power, bring about changes both
Right.
on the production side, right? When consumers choose and demand for healthy food, definitely businesses will eventually relook at their systems and processes and come up with healthier products, which is
Mm,
produced not only in a safe and nutritious way for the Fijian consumers, but also it will be produced in an environmentally safe way. What we advocated on with a lot of rural communities was how they can, grow food sustainably and how they can consume sustainably. That means sustainable production and consumption, and
mm,
using, all the traditional methods and techniques so that they don't bring harm to the environment. At the same time, for their family and together with their family, for their community, they can produce nutritious healthy food. We know the consumption behavior and the patterns of consumers does have impact on their health. And no matter how much medical care is given, but if you don't change your consumption pattern and
yeah.
don't eat healthy and fresh and nutritious, definitely you in future you will be affected by these NCDs.
What is the true cost of food? Does the consumer, does the average person accommodate the health costs they'll incur later, the anguish they'll incur later through having an NCD if they eat unhealthy foods, or do they not? And I don't think they do. I think that's a very hard story to tell. So let me just just because your Consumers Fiji is really in the kind of supporting the policy framework in a way and putting some of the systems in that help guide people. But let me go to Leo for a second, because you come from a very culture and foodist position. And if I said to you, what do you believe is the true cost of food, healthy eating, what would you say to me?
Looking back into this in the Vanuatu communities, and at the end of the day, we all reap the results of what we eat. As I always say in my campaign, and what I advocate for is you are what you eat. At the end
Mm,
of the day, if you don't invest in your food now, in your food choices, not the perfect or better food choices for your health, you will reap the results at the end of the day. And the cost of health is way expensive than the food you eat now.
absolutely.
It becomes so expensive that everyone complains about the cost of medical bills, the cost of flying overseas and getting treatment and all that. But I always advocate for that, and I always remind everyone that it is not the government or the health that put that poison in your plate in the first place. It was your choice. You did that choice, and now you have to live with the consequences of that choice.
Yeah. So, Leo, because that's a really important point, is the personal responsibility position. And so there's two parts of this. One is the food environment, which is what Seema is actually engaged in protecting and saving in many ways with consumer information and knowledge and awareness, etc. But then you're working in the local food promotion space, because that's where responsibility can sit. And it's not just responsibility, it's also inspiration. Don't you agree? I mean, I watched Vanuatu come alive when they saw you win Pacific Island Food Revolution, because that was a win for Vanuatu's culture. So the cultural solution is what you're so good at. So can you speak to that for a little bit?
After that win with the Pacific Island Food Revolution, people have started, eyes have been opened, and people are starting to realize that our food is actually the best, because colonial mindsets have twisted people to think that everything that comes in a boat from overseas is better than what we have. And what I'm advocating for, that is not a true message. That is totally wrong. That is the wrong mindset that our communities have these days. We should be proud of our culture, and that culture has many benefits. When we look at our food culture, yes, of course, our food culture is quite heavy, and you get those plates where they have a dense amount of um, root crops or staples. We want to change that message that people must think differently, because every time in the communities, everyone says, oh, local food is boring. I live with manioc or taro every day, and I'm so tired of it. I want to have rice instead. I want to have noodles. But when we go out in the community, we tell them taro is not, or cassava is not boring. It's just the way how we are accustomed to the same routine every day. We just gotta have to make it look different a bit, so that it looks appealing, and then we can continue and live off that. It is the best option. When you live off the land, which is what I'm advocating for, when you live off the land, there's fish in the ocean, there's foods that you can grow around your house available all year round, and there's seasonal fruits that can support you in every way. But we just need to change our perspective on that food culture and try and look at it differently. How can we serve a lap lap differently? How can we serve a tara differently, so that it's not boring to our diet? And yes, of course, there will always be these traditional food cultures, but that is the foundation. Yeah, people blame the culture a lot, saying no, the food is that food culture is too heavy. But we try and change that, and as you have seen on the Pacific Island Food Revolution, we try and serve those local producers differently, so people look at an island cabbage, a bella leaf differently, or we try and get them to look at taro differently, and so
Right.
that they're not stuck in that past, in that food culture that was relevant back then. We
That's
have
right.
to get them to know that, or understand that our lifestyle today is different, and we need to evolve as well and adapt with the lifestyle. Generations to come continue to be proud of this food culture, but continue to tell a meaningful story in a way that is it portrays our culture and our identity, but also it promotes the healthy side of it, so that at the end of the day, it's beneficial for the whole community, for the land and the health of the whole community.
But could you speak to the importance of labeling, Seema, and Consumer Fiji's function in that space?
We have pushed a lot. I mean, we have done a lot of work, and we have actually pushed for correct labelings with the correct ingredients to be provided for consumers, so that they can make an informed decision and choice whilst purchasing food products, but which is not the current case, because everybody, especially the Pacific Islands, we know that we are import dependent, and sometimes we also say that we have become a dumping ground for a lot of products. And if you pick up a product from a certain shelves, you will see that sometimes there is no labeling at all. I mean, the labeling is there, but it does not say or anything about the ingredients being present in that particular food product. So what we have done is, like, we are in a leading advocacy organization, whilst we continuously raise awareness and alerts to consumers, because we have to impart information, knowledge to the consumers about going out and actually looking for the ingredients. And once you have read, and rightfully as you have said, not everybody has the capability to understand what that labeling means. Sugar is captured in different forms by different manufacturers. It has so many names. It doesn't actually say sugar. There are different forms of sugar that is present in ingredients. So how do consumers make such decisions? The other funny thing is, sometimes you find it difficult to read what is written on the product. They leave aside the ingredients even with the glasses on. So there's there's no information to make a decision. Like, we have bought some products during our survey, where we actually can't read what is there. The font size is so small, so we're also pushing for certain font size, so that consumers can actually read what is on the written on the product.
I mean, it seems to me, and this may be a bit of a radical concept, But the word health itself has become so complicated and so hard because I know that when we were designing Pacific Island Food Revolution, we were like, well, we don't really have to be nutritionists or 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 have chemistry degrees or any of that stuff because we know that natural local food will stop these problems, will stop the issues with NCDs.
Mm,
Sure, there may be a few things that you can't have too much of. Maybe you can't have many mangoes
mm,
because it's too sugary, etc.
yes.
But bottom line is, you take away from the consumers, from the public, who have difficult enough decisions to make already around, and life is hard enough,
Mm,
frankly, without having to be nutritionists and scientists as well. And a lot of our view was to simplify the message, just eat local food. Is there an equivalent in Fiji where local farmers are subsidized or imported? Is there a way for vegetables and fruits in the market to be reduced in price by a policy level, by some advocacy? I'm just asking for your views on that.
there's a way if we try it out, from the policy level, if the government, and I mean currently I've seen the Ministry of Agriculture is working very closely with the farmers, giving them different forms of assistance, and if this continues, I think the supply will definitely increase. That is what we need. We have a lot of space available for large scale farming, and we have already discussed that being in Pacific Islands, we are inundated with different so many tropical fruits. In Fiji, we could see the Ministry of Agriculture currently is working
Mm.
with a lot of consumers in
Yes, I've heard.
so many different ways, providing them with training and assistance on how they can go about with sustainable farming, and how they can increase their supply, for the domestic market supply.
Mm.
But if all the different stakeholders can come together, who are involved in changing the mindset of people, or working very closely with the communities, I suppose we can bring about changes, on the policy level, because definitely
Mm.
Consumer Council makes a lot of submissions, and we also look into health aspects, and this is one of the component where going sustainable consumption production.
West is not best. West is not best. Vanuatu's best. Fiji's best. And
Mm,
local is best. And then, when we say local, we mean local wherever you are. I guess I want to wrap up this discussion a bit. This is really interesting because it's also very different perspectives. Leo from a very cultural and cuisine position, and you from a more scientific and kind of not policy but guideline framework position. It's almost like if you guys could work together, we could really knock some stuff out. Maybe that's a conversation for a future time. Leo, let me ask you, food and people are not separate. Food and identity is deeply connected to food. So how do you think through your work you can get people to care more about their long-term view of life around food?
After that win from Pacific Island Food Revolution, I've traveled a lot around the islands, and I've had a lot of elders and even young kids uh, shouting on the road, saying, "Hey, that's the winner!" And a lot of elders came up to me and said, "We are so proud of what you did. We are so happy that someone finally represented our food culture and showed the whole world our food culture." And I said, "I'm just proud of the work and we're doing, and it's still the start of a long journey to go, and there's a lot of challenges that we may face ahead, but we need to make a change." I do a lot in these workshops that I run in the communities, or awareness that I do is I talk about our food culture and how we can serve it differently, so that we can be proud when guests come in, or people who come in and visit our communities savor those dishes, and then they enjoy it, and they give you those positive feedbacks. And I've worked with a lot of communities that after I left them, they called back and said, we've cooked this up, we've cooked this taro this way, how you showed us, but we added some twists and turns to it. And these people loved it, and they said they are definitely hosting more meetings here, or they're definitely doing more events here because of what we did. And we cannot be thankful enough of what we have learned. And I told them that this is not when it comes to food, food culture. We have a very unique food culture and we have a diverse food culture. All we need to do is tell the story and be proud of the identity that the food culture brings along with it, because food is not just something you put on the plate and then you eat. It's the whole, it's an identity in itself, and it has a whole story. A piece of a food culture on a plate tells the story, and the stories has been told by ancestors long before us, and it's still being passed down from generations to generations until now. We are still using that particular variety of taro here in this space or in this village because someone passed it on down to us, and we should be proud of that, and we should keep the story alive. Use local because of these benefits that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
When you use only locals, not only do you help local farmers, but you also help the land and the environment close to you. And at the end of the day, you're telling the whole world the story about your community and
That's right.
show the unique
That's
identity.
right.
Yeah.
So you're really talking about the power of identity and ancestral connection,
Yeah.
and how inspiring that is when people really reconnect to that. They really see who they are, and that's how things change. And I see it changing in Vanuatu. I'm watching all you guys on social media between the work you're doing, and Mama Batalsi and Jerry and the guys at the Department of Tourism. There's been a real shift in Vanuatu, I guess, through COVID and through you being the winner of Pacific Island Food Revolution. It's happening, and it doesn't take many inspiring leaders to make great change. So congratulations to you, Leo, for being one of those leaders, and I'm sure you'll be doing that for years to come. And Seema, let me ask you: do you have any final notes? We're already over time, so I'm gonna ask us to put a final note. And Leo's note was around inspiration and cultural inspiration. Do you have any final messages for the consumers of Fiji that you'd like people to really feel?
Focus. I think I'm more certain that a change can be brought about with more awareness sessions and a bit of support. As Leo is saying that we are so dependent on processed food, but when COVID came, when we were hit by the first wave, uh, people just reverted to backyard gardening. So and it was amazing to see that almost every household had something growing in their backyard. We used to see a huge line in front of those seed sellers, and these seed sellers used to run out of seeds. Consumers need to understand that, especially the Fiji is known to be one of the highest literate populace of the Pacific. Imparting the same should not be an issue, but we have seen the dependency of imported has pushed them away and more on Western food. But it is not hard. Changes is not hard. It can be pushed through. Like I remember in olden days, we used to have in schools we used to be trained, and there was a class on gardening. I think that should be brought back by the Ministry of Education, so that that is inculcated into us right from the beginning, the importance of small gardenings for fresh nutritious food. And a bit of advocacy and awareness from all the stakeholders should definitely bring about mindset changes in the mindset of people. And we might, as Leo said, it's not hard. We will definitely move towards that change and become more move towards more healthy eating.
Thank you so much, both. This is really interesting and very different perspectives, a very rich conversation. Thanks for your insights. Thanks for your time. Thank you to the community who are tuning in, and thank you to the New Zealand and Australian government for supporting Pacific Island Food Revolution. We are about to film season 3, so stay tuned for that. And of course, Pacific Island Food Revolution sits over both of the areas that you're both talking to. So, we've got to get you back on, Leo, don't we? We've got to find a way. Thanks also to FAO, who are also committed to food system restoration in the Pacific. Have a wonderful evening, both of you, and great to see you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Robert.
Likewise, and bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, naka.